Hey, it's time again for another episode of the Press Box Podcast. Hi, I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. My other co-host, Joseph Miranda, will be along in a minute. And today we're going to talk a little bit of football today. College football, professional football. The college football playoffs are about ready to begin. We're 1 week away, or less than a week away, from the committee's final rankings. We know one team that's definitely in. That's the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. We're pretty sure we know the other two, Alabama and Clemson, but they still have one hurdle to overcome, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then that fourth spot, obviously, is going to be up for grabs depending upon what happens. We're going to talk a little NFL football. The NFL is into Week 12 just completed. All teams now have played 11 games, so they all have 5 games left. The playoff picture is starting to round into shape, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the surprises that we've seen this year in the NFL, some of the good stories as far as young players, as well as maybe some veteran players. And we'll touch a little bit on the Tiger Woods-Phil Mickelson match that was held the day after Thanksgiving in Las Vegas in what was supposed to be pay-per-view, but ended up being free for view. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we roll into episode 28 of the Press Box Podcast.
So welcome to episode 28 here on the Press Box Podcast. And like we said, let's start talking about the college football playoff. I guess selection show that's going to happen a week from this Sunday, is that right?
Correct.
The final selection show.
Well, actually, we're sitting here on a Tuesday, so it'll be this coming Sunday.
This coming Sunday, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we got conference championship games this weekend, and then they'll make their selections the day after. So the regular season has finished this past weekend. And the top 4 remained unchanged like it has for the last few weeks, except for the fact that Michigan lost, which we're sitting here Tuesday night, but the selection show for tonight hasn't come out yet.
No, it hasn't come out
So obviously we're expecting Michigan to be bounced out of that,
right?
With either Ohio State or Oklahoma.
Or Georgia.
That's true. I'm thinking ahead because Georgia may or may not be there. But,
That's right. That's right.
So... yeah, I mean, I think you put Georgia in there right now, like you're saying, and then that'll get worked out one way or another this weekend against Alabama in the SEC championship game. So I'll go ahead and let you give your thoughts on that to start with.
Okay, so as you said correctly, the regular season is over. The media has been very upset over the last 6 or 7 weeks because there's been no chaos, as they like to say. There's been no upsets. And I think the last 4 weeks we've had Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Notre Dame 3, and Michigan 4. So there's been no change at all. And none of the top 3, the undefeated teams, have been beaten. But as you said, this week we had a minor change. Michigan was hammered by Ohio State, which will knock them out. But tonight's show should be pretty cut and dry. It should be Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Notre Dame 3, and more than likely Georgia will be 4. Yeah. I would expect Oklahoma to be 5 and Ohio State to be 6. Going after tonight.
Think Ohio State 6 instead of 5, even though they beat Michigan?
Well, the reason I say that is because, remember, they were 10 coming in.
That's true.
Okay, yeah. So, and Oklahoma did win, even though they gave up, a gazillion million points. I think Oklahoma will stay up there only because the committee knows that both those teams have to play again this weekend, so they can move them around if they want to, Yeah. And if anything, if history has taught us anything, back the very first year this playoff was in place, 2014, TCU went into the last week ranked 3rd and ended up dropping to 6th, even though they had won. So there's a lot of changes that could still be made. But I think the thing that is most interesting going into this weekend are the scenarios that could play themselves out. And regardless of what the media wants to insinuate or what all the ESPN, FPI projection computers want to insinuate, Notre Dame is in. I mean, I think even ESPN's computer gives them a 99% chance to make the playoff, And the only reason it's not 100 is because obviously it's not happened yet. Yeah. But they're in. The question then becomes what happens with these conference championship games. And as you said, Alabama will play Georgia Saturday. Oklahoma will play West Virginia. Oklahoma will play Texas, Texas is the only team that's beaten Oklahoma this year. Right. And Ohio State will play Northwestern. Yeah. The interesting thing about those games is Texas is the only team to have beaten Oklahoma, but Texas has 3 losses. Northwestern has, I believe, 3, maybe 4 losses, but probably 3. But Northwestern has not won a non-conference game. So their only wins are in their conference. Right. And they have not had to play Ohio State during the regular season. So how much weight would you give a win by Oklahoma or Ohio State this Saturday based on the opponents they're playing? The key game is Alabama-Georgia, because if you've got Alabama ranked number 1 and Georgia ranked number 4, and those two are playing in the conference championship game, what do you do if Georgia wins? All right. Let's say Georgia beats Alabama by a field goal. All right. Georgia obviously is going to stay in the top 4, probably move up. But then does the committee just drop Alabama to 4?
I think so. That's what you should do. Yeah.
So really, if you're an Ohio State or an Oklahoma fan,
you want Alabama to win.
You want Alabama to win. That's exactly right. Yeah. Because otherwise, you're probably going to get frozen out of this thing. And then really the only question then becomes, and we left out Clemson. Clemson has to play Pittsburgh in the ACC championship, but that upset is probably unlikely, even though it could happen. So the only question then is, where do you seat these guys? Where does everybody fall in? And
I mean, I think Alabama beats Georgia.
I think so.
There really hasn't been a time this year they've really looked vulnerable at all.
No.
So, I mean, in years past, they've lost a game here or there. Maybe they've had some close games, but this year they look even at a higher level than usual. So I don't see them losing that game. And then, like you went over some of the conference championship matchups, which aren't that great in my opinion.
Correct.
And I realize what they're doing, especially in the Big Ten. You have the divisions, right, where Northwestern win their side of the divisions, so they play in the championship game. But I kind of like just maybe they should just play a rematch of Ohio State Michigan for the Big Ten championship game.
Right.
I mean, Northwestern, they deserve to be there because they did what they were supposed to do, but they don't really deserve to be in the Big Ten championship game. They're not that good.
Right.
Ohio State wins that game, I think. Clemson's going to beat Pittsburgh. It's very likely. I think that's what you're looking at. So I think there will be the 4 spot up for grabs.
Right.
Assuming Clemson and Alabama win, like we talked about, I don't really see Notre Dame jumping them.
No.
There's no real.
Nor should they.
Yeah, they don't really need to. And then you have an interesting thing here, which again I don't think is going to happen, is if Alabama takes care of business,
right,
and Ohio State and Oklahoma both lose.
Correct.
Then like you talked about, ESPN would be happy for the chaos because then it's totally up for grabs.
Well, and here's an interesting thing to think about. I mean, you've got UCF sitting out there,
11-0,
all right? Yeah. But remember, they lost their quarterback. I mean, their quarterback had a very severe injury. So now your question is, okay, let's say UCF wins their MAC-12 or whatever they call that conference championship, and your scenario plays out. Oklahoma, Ohio State lose, all right? Let's say Georgia loses by a field goal to Alabama. Would you take a 2-loss Georgia over an undefeated UCF? Because who else would you take there, right? I mean, you're not going to take LSU with 3 losses, and there's nobody else up there.
I would, if you're going by the letter of the law, who's better? Georgia's probably better.
Correct.
But I would almost put UCF in at 4, let them get trounced by Alabama, and basically say, like, there, you happy?
Right.
Like, you got in. You can't compete with these teams. Be quiet.
You're right, but let's now address the elephant in the room, okay? To coin a nice phrase, there is, I really believe. I mean, they tout this committee, say, oh, we want the 4 best teams in the country. Well, they really don't, okay? Because what you just said there should happen. If the scenario plays out where Ohio State and Oklahoma lose and Georgia loses, UCF should be in there. But do they really want UCF playing Alabama? In other words, what about the ratings? See, that's another thing. You've got networks breathing down your neck saying, hey, I don't want – who's going to tune in to watch UCF Alabama besides the UCF people, right? Even the Alabama people are going to say, this is ridiculous, okay? So that's another concern, and that's why I think it's all a farce. That's why I think what they need to do, and we've touched on this in previous episodes, is if you really want a true playoff, and I think our producer Nathan brought this up, and maybe you did as well, and I remember Nathan saying it, is we're sitting here now on November 27th, right? This Saturday is December 1st, okay? That's when your conference championship games are. Yeah. You've got Saturday, December 8th. You've got Saturday, December 15th. You've got 2 Saturdays coming up after that where you could play some games, okay? So expand this thing to 8. If you expand it to 8, the problems are solved because now you take your 5 champions, right? You can take Oklahoma, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, and
the Pac-12.
The Pac-12, right? Washington. Whoever wins that, right? All right. Whoever wins, Washington and Utah, I think, are playing. You take those 5 champions; they earned it. They are conference champions in your Power 5 conferences. And now you take 3 at-large teams. You got Notre Dame undefeated. You got UCF undefeated, and then you can pick a Georgia if you want, if they're the best. Yeah. All right. And now you seed them. You can seed them just like you're doing now. Alabama's 1, Clemson's 2, Notre Dame's 3.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And now on the 8th you play a game. On the 15th you play a game. You don't even have to do that. You only need 1 extra week, right? Because you go from 8 to 4. Right?
Yeah.
All right. So so you could play December 8th or December 15th, and then on December 29th have your semifinals. Yeah. And why that is not so clear to everyone just boggles my mind, okay?
The Army-Navy game ready to take a hit on the 8th if that happened.
Well, all right, so put it on the 15th then. I mean, in all deference... listen, I agree. In all deference to our young men who are going to go off to war, give them the stage on December 8th, okay? And then December 15th, you play your round of 8, and then on December 29th, you play your semifinals, and you move on down the road, all right? Now you wouldn't even need a committee. The only thing you might need a committee for is, okay, who are the 3 at-large teams, all right? That would be the only thing you'd have to determine is who are the 3, and the seeding. If you want them to determine who's seeded where, fine, okay? Yeah. And then you'd have a true champion. And I don't want to hear these people who say, well, what about the team that's 9th? I don't care. They didn't win a championship, okay? And I think it'd be pretty clear to determine who the best 3 at-large teams are, right?
Yeah, well, you just kind of went through it right now. Notre Dame...
UCF.
You put UCF, and then you have to pick either from
Georgia
or I guess Washington State's 8th, LSU's 7th.
Right. But see, that would be easy because Georgia would have 2 losses. Their losses would be to LSU and Alabama. Yeah. LSU would have 3 losses, so they're out. Right. Washington State only has 2 losses. Their 1 loss would be to a conference champion, Washington, and their other loss, I believe, was to Auburn at the start. No, maybe it wasn't Auburn, but. My point is, it shouldn't be that difficult to determine, you see? You could probably tell me who Washington State lost to.
Yeah. They should Washington, right?
Washington would be in if they won the conference.
I'm saying Washington beat Washington State.
Yes, they did. And they lost one other game.
They lost to USC.
USC. Yeah. All right, there you go. So now you determine, okay, which losses are... To me, that Georgia would be the one then that would be come out.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So it's not that difficult, okay? But under the current scenario, what bothers me so much about it is you're starting to split hairs. I mean, you have to determine the eye test. Who looks better? Yeah. Who doesn't look good? I mean, that's ridiculous to me, okay? A win is a win is a win is a win. All right? If you're undefeated, you're in, period. And all these people that are talking, especially unless you're UCF, that's right. They're not a Power 5 conference team. Okay, it's really pretty much.
What do you think's holding them back from doing that? The 8 teams. Do you think they'll get there? It's just a matter of time.
Well, that's a really good question. I think this is a stepping stone. I think they went from total voting back when I was to a BCS, which was just 2 teams. To a 4-team playoff, which I think was a good first step. And now the logical next step would be the 8-team playoff. And then you've got a true, nobody can argue that somebody's left out, all right? Because let's face it, as much as I'm a Notre Dame fan, if I was an Oklahoma fan or an Ohio State fan and I finished 12-1 and I got left out and I was a conference champion, I'd feel pretty upset, okay? So that's why I think all the conference champions should get in. Yeah, if you're going to put any weight on winning a conference championship, but I don't know. But I just think it's ridiculous with all this talk about they don't deserve to be in because they didn't impress this team. They didn't impress. It ought to be just playoff. Ought to be playoff. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Well, we'll obviously talk again about this once they release the final rankings here this Sunday, and we may even do a little bowl preview.
I think we should do a bowl preview. I think we should do
many exciting bowls this year as always.
Always, yeah.
We'll get into that.
I'm sure the R plus L car carrier bowl will be the one that will be the most.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's another thing that we might want to touch on too. Is I mean, if you're 6-6, you don't really deserve.
Yeah,
to be
I think it needs to be 8 wins.
Right. I mean, you ought to be able to sleepwalk yourself into 6 wins. I mean, come on. Yeah. You play 12 games, Yeah. But let's face it. The only reason these teams want to go to bowls is not because of the couple $100,000 they're going to get from the toilet bowl on December 20th. It's the fact that they can practice. Right. Okay, a whole nother month. And they can work on things. They can get young guys. That's why they want to go to a bowl. Because, if you're a team that doesn't go to a bowl, you're done now. Yeah. You're finished.
Yeah.
So.
Like you said, we'll get into that more. But let's talk a little bit NFL right now.
Okay.
We just got finished rewatching the Monday night game from last night that we taped the second half of. But let's start there. Titans. They've been up and down this year. They beat the Patriots, 34-10, something like that.
Beat them bad.
Yeah, and
beat the Cowboys bad.
Yeah, and they come out last night and
laid an egg.
Yeah, laid an egg against the Texans, who I think the Texans are actually good. I mean, they won 8 in a row. They're 8-3 now, but seeing how well we've seen them play this year, there's no reason they should have really looked like that last night. Titans, I mean, meaning
right, exactly.
And I guess if you look at the stats and the actual production, Mariota had a good game, but I just don't really see it from their whole offense. I made the comment earlier that Derrick Henry's a waste of space back there, and yeah, I mean they just don't. I don't know. They need to change something, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, not only did they beat the Patriots, they beat the Cowboys, and they even beat the defending Super Bowl champions, the Eagles. And then they go ahead and get beat by they got hammered by the Colts 2 weeks ago.
Right, I forgot about that.
And then they get pretty much hammered by the Texans. I mean, that game really was never in doubt. Yeah. I mean, I think they came out. I think the Titans, if I remember, took a 10-0 lead, and then after that, the Texans scored, 24 unanswered points. Right. But you're right. There's something wrong there, and I really don't know what it is. I mean, I guess the question is they have to determine, is Mariota going to be a franchise quarterback?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not sold that he is.
I know you're not. Yeah. I know you're not. And there's times he looks good, and there's other times that he looks horrible. Derrick Henry, you make a good point. I mean, last year when they made their little playoff run, he was, against the Chiefs. I mean, he ran the ball for 184 yards against the Chiefs. But the problem with a Derrick Henry is, unless you have the lead and you're trying to pound it out, what good is it? You can't really run him 30 times when you're down by 14 points.
Yeah. He reminds me of a Brandon Jacobs type guy who's not really explosive, but like you said, you have to be in the right situation to get the most out of him.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, and they have another guy that they had that
Dion Lewis.
Dion Lewis, that's right. So he's kind of their change of pace guy that can take it outside, a little quick type back. But and they've got some good receivers. I mean, it's not like they're bereft of talent. They've got some good receivers. But I don't know what the problem is. I really don't. I mean, they can't seem to maybe make the critical stop on defense.
Yeah, and like you said, they beat the Eagles, and then they turn around the next week and lose 13-12 to the Bills. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
And then, I don't know.
I mean, they beat the Texans the first time they played them, and now they get hammered by the Texans. And then I don't know what's wrong with the Titans. They can't seem to get over the hump and put together any kind of consistent performance. And I don't know.
Look, going forward here, they have a chance to win their next 3. They got the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Giants.
That's right.
Those are very winnable.
Winnable games.
Yeah. And they got to finish up with the Redskins, the Colts, which will be tougher. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's not out of the question yet. But
they have a good enough team to run the table and finish 10-6. Yeah. All right, now will they do that? Probably not.
No.
Yeah.
To quote your favorite line.
Yeah. To quote my favorite line from Dodgeball, probably not.
Probably not.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. And they would almost have to run the table to make the playoffs because they're sitting behind the Ravens are 6-5 right now. You've got the Chargers are 7-3, right? Or 8-3. So the Chargers have wild card
8-3,
spot. Yeah, and they have a wild card spot locked up because the Chiefs are what, 10-2?
9-2.
Yeah, 9-2.
Got Chiefs, Texans, Patriots, Steelers winning their divisions right now.
Exactly.
Chargers are 8-3, and the Colts are 6-5.
Right.
And the Ravens are 6-5.
So really, if you look at it right now, assuming that the Chiefs are not going to fall on their face and that the Chargers are for real, there's only one spot left. They're all competing for that one last spot, right? Because the Chargers are going to get one of them.
Yeah. Colts and Ravens are 6-5.
Right. So, and the Titans are 5-6. So they've still got a chance, a legitimate chance, because they play the Colts one more time. And they do have those games against the Jets and the Giants. So, but they're going to have to make a decision real quick here after this year as to whether they think Mariota's the guy because, he has some great games and then he has some, head-scratching games.
Yeah, I think that if you're wondering whether he's the guy or not, he's not the guy. Like
that's a good point.
These guys that come out, like Andrew Luck came out, they're like he's a franchise quarterback, and he has shown nothing but that.
Carson Wentz,
same thing.
Goff.
These guys, Goff now.
Right.
First year,
right.
But now it definitely is. And these other guys where you're kind of back and forth, Winston's not.
Right.
Mariota, we just talked about, I don't think he is.
No. Blake Bortles is not.
Bortles is not.
Right.
So these guys that teams are trying to talk themselves into are obviously not. But yeah, but let's also from last night, the Texans. Do you think they're for real? I'm assuming they're going to make the playoffs, but are they for real in terms of we've seen in the past make the playoffs and then waltz into New England and just get the crap kicked out of them or just lay down? Are they going to actually make some noise this year? Do you think they won 8 in a row, which is not?
Yeah,
can't really argue with that.
No, it's not. But I hate to sound like this is another college football discussion, but who have they beaten?
I'll tell you.
No, I meant that somewhat rhetorically, but you can tell me who they've beaten, right?
Yeah.
Who'd they lose to? They lost to the Giants, all right?
Giants,
they lost
Titans,
to the Patriots. Okay.
The Titans.
But they haven't beaten anybody of significance, if I can recall.
They beat the Colts, and the Colts are down.
All right.
They beat the Cowboys, Bills, Jaguars, Dolphins, Broncos, Redskins.
All right.
Titans.
Who? There's nobody in there that strikes fear in anybody's heart, okay? Yeah. So my point in saying that is that I'm not sure if the Texans have to, of course, they'll have a home game because they're going to win their division. But I'm not sure if they have to go on the road to either Kansas City, New England, or Pittsburgh that they could win those games. Maybe Pittsburgh. But I don't think they could beat New England in New England. They've proven they can't. And I'm not sure they can beat the Chiefs in Kansas City.
Yeah. So
to answer your question, I would have to say they're not for real if for real means making a deep enough run to challenge for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they somehow have a pretty easy schedule here. They got the Browns this week.
Yeah.
Colts-Texans game could be pretty good.
Could be.
Then the Jets, Eagles, and Jaguars.
Yeah.
So, you could be looking at 12-4 there.
That's right. And the Eagles, depending upon where they're at that time, could give them a fight. But right now, the Eagles don't look like they've got, they've got a lot of problems, the Eagles, in their secondary and on their team in general. But, I don't know. I don't see the Texans as being a team that's going to strike fear in my heart as far as going to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. I think your teams in the AFC that I would be concerned about would be the Chiefs and the Patriots, obviously. To be honest with you, the Steelers, there's something about them that I just don't see them making any kind of run. Yeah. We've talked
Chargers.
about
the Chargers.
The Chargers, yeah. I'm coming around. I agree with you there. I think the Chargers have a good defense and they've got a really good quarterback. I think they could make it. They could make a challenge. I really do. But again, they have to prove to me that they can go into New England and win a game. You see what I mean?
They're at the Steelers this Sunday night.
All right. Well, at the Steelers. So we're going to find out a little bit about the Chargers Sunday night, right? Yeah. But I don't know that they can beat New England. That's the thing that they've never been able to do. But the Ravens. Let's talk about the Ravens for a minute. That's an interesting team. We know their defense is solid. Okay. They've got this Lamar Jackson guy now that's won a couple games, partly because Flacco's been hurt. They talk about he's got a bad hip, but they could be a challenge for somebody. I don't think Lamar Jackson is a franchise quarterback, but he's got just enough ability to tuck it and run, and just enough ability to throw it where they may be hard to beat if they get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe, but I also don't see him really coming up big in the playoffs.
No, he's not. No,
no. I know what you mean though. Like
they could win a playoff
problems.
game.
Yeah,
they could win a playoff game. They could sneak up and win a playoff game.
Yeah,
if they're the 6th seed and they have to go to Pittsburgh, you never know.
Do you give them more? I guess what's the word? Cachet to make some noise in the Colts. Do you think they're better than the Colts? Both 6 and 5.
No, because the Colts have the better quarterback.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, and the Colts have won what? Colts have won 5 in a row. Yeah. So Andrew Luck is playing at a level that he hasn't played at in probably 3 or 4 years.
Since they got to the AFC Championship game.
That's right, and their defense is playing real well. I think the Colts are for real. I think nobody's talking about them a lot, but I think they're for real this year. They got a good coach, and I think they're for real. Yeah. But I mean, again, if you really want to play this thing out, let's look at the scenario. Let's assume that the seedings are going to be like they are today. All right, so you'd have the Chiefs 1, the Patriots 2, the Texans 3, the Steelers 4, the Chargers 5, and pick who you want, the Colts. Yeah. Let's say the Colts win that last playoff spot. So the Colts would have to go to Houston, and the Chargers would have to go to Pittsburgh. Okay? We're going to find out about the Chargers in Pittsburgh this week. But I think the Colts could very easily beat the Texans. I really do.
Yeah.
They're in the same division. They've played them twice. They know about them. Yeah. But then the question becomes, can either of those winners go into New England or Kansas City and win those games?
I think you can go into Kansas City and win, just because Chiefs always do this. I mean, granted Alex Smith's gone, but Mahomes doesn't have playoff cachet to.
You're right.
I could see them losing easier than the Patriots in the playoffs. Put it that way.
I could too, but I'll tell you what I think is different about this Chiefs team. All right, it's the same thing we've talked about in college football. Why is Alabama at a level that they haven't been at in the last 3 or 4 years? They have a quarterback.
Right.
All right. Why did Notre Dame go undefeated this year? They have a quarterback that can throw the football. Yeah. What have the Chiefs had before Mahomes? I mean, don't get me wrong. Alex Smith is a nice quarterback.
He gets you to the playoffs.
I think he gets a bum rap, but you're right. He gets you to the playoffs, but he can't win games with his arm. Yeah. Who'd they have before Alex Smith? I don't remember. I mean, Matt Castle. Same thing. Yeah. But now they got a kid that the guy makes plays. Yeah. So my point is, at home, with a guy like that, you're never out of that game. So that's why I think this year might be just a little bit different with the Chiefs. All right. And I think if the Patriots have to go to Kansas City, I think the Chiefs almost beat them in New England. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how that plays itself out this year, because you got so many scenarios that could happen.
So let's look at the NFC now.
All right.
NFC, you have 2 10-win teams. Okay, Rams, Saints.
And they've separated themselves.
They have. Yeah. So, one's the 1 seed, one's the 2 seed there.
Right.
Got the Bears at 8 and 3.
Right.
And then you got the East, Cowboys and Redskins at 6 and 5. So somebody's going to win that division.
Right.
And that leaves 2 wild cards, and you have a lot of 6-win teams. You got the Seahawks, the Panthers, Vikings.
Right.
And the Redskins or Cowboys, whoever doesn't win.
Yeah, you got more teams in the hunt. Yeah.
So it's more of a kind of a wide open hunt there.
Yeah, but I think you have to look at it this way. I think unless one of those NFC East teams gets on a roll, the Eagles have to play the Redskins this coming Monday night.
Yeah.
All right. So if the Eagles win, they're 6 and 6, and the Redskins are 6 and 6.
Yeah.
The Cowboys have to play the Saints Thursday night.
That's right.
More than likely, they're going to get
6 and 6.
right. So now you're going to have 3 teams that are 6 and 6. Yeah. My point in saying all that is that I think the only team that's going to come out of that division is the one that wins it. I don't think there's going to be a wild card out of that division. It's my opinion. Yeah. Okay. So your wild cards are going to either be the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Panthers, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe the Packers, but I really don't think the Packers can run the table.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So you're looking at the Seahawks, the Panthers, and what was the other one you mentioned? Vikings, exactly. So, and the Vikings looked pretty good Sunday night against Green Bay. I mean, Kirk Cousins finally came of age, if you want to call it that, and I mean, he threw for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, put the ball on the money. He was throwing it, and they've got some really good receivers, the Vikings.
Yeah.
I mean, that Adam Thielen kid, I mean, he's unbelievable. He's got like 800-yard receiving games. Stephon Diggs, I mean, he's unbelievable. Yeah. They got a good running back in Dalvin Cook. Their defense is solid. I think the Vikings could make some noise.
Yeah.
But again, I think the Rams and the Saints have separated themselves from everybody. The only thing the Rams don't have that the Saints have a little bit more of is defense right now. Now, when they get Aqib Talib back this week, and if they get the Butler kid, I think his name is Butler. I may have it wrong. The guy they got from the Chiefs, the other corner.
Peters?
Peters, that's it. I'm sorry, I got the wrong name. Peters. He's been hurt.
Yeah.
So if those two guys come back, I think your defense gets a lot stronger, okay? Because the Rams' defense was pretty strong early in the season. So if they can get that fixed going into, say, a potential NFC Championship game in New Orleans, then you might have a real battle there, okay?
Yeah. That'd be a good game. I'd like to see that, assuming that, you know how we are. It's not going to be like a 9-3 game.
No, I know.
So there's going to be a lot of points, but that'd still be a good game to see.
And really, the Saints, I find it hard to believe that the Saints are going to win out. They've won 10 in a row. They're going to stub their toe somewhere, maybe.
Let's see. Well,
they got to play the Panthers one more time.
Cowboys, at the Cowboys,
right.
At the Bucks,
right.
At the Panthers,
right.
3 games in a row,
right.
And then 2 home games, Steelers and Panthers.
Okay, so see, that's the Steelers. That'll be an interesting game, and the Panthers twice more, right? They still haven't played the Panthers.
They haven't played them
So
yet.
so I'm gonna say this: the Saints are gonna lose at least one more. Okay, I mean at least one more. So 14-2, maybe 13-3, maybe. The Rams, check the Rams schedule. I know the Rams have got. Well, they got.
They're at the Lions, at the Bears.
Right.
Big game.
Right.
Host the Eagles, at the Cardinals, host the 49ers.
Okay. So, and go through that where they're at on those games. Lions are at home?
No, they're at the Lions, at the Bears, and at the Cardinals.
In a row.
No, not in a row. But
all right. So Lions and Cardinals are wins. Bears, more than likely a win. 49ers a win. And then the other one was the Eagles.
Yeah.
And where's that one at?
LA.
Okay. They'll be see the Rams. I see the Rams having a better chance to win out than the Saints.
One
do.
is at Chicago. It
could be. That's exactly right.
Sunday night game. That should be good.
That should be a good game. So, I guess I said all that to say, if I had to sit, if you asked me right now to predict, I'm going to say the Rams will end up getting the 1 seed, even though they lost to the Saints, because I think they'll have fewer losses than the Saints when the dust settles, and the Saints will be the 2 seed, which means then that the game would be in LA, which is going to help would help LA, But either way, I think you're right now. I would say that your conference championship games are going to be the Saints and the Rams in the NFC, and the Chiefs and the Patriots in the AFC.
Yeah. That's probably the favorites if you look at the odds.
If you look at the odds, unless the Patriots, the Patriots don't have anybody left, do they? Check their schedule real quick.
Yeah, they have. They host the Vikings.
All right, that's not
a late game.
All right,
at Miami, which you never know.
Never know with that one.
They're always can maybe struggle in Miami. Then they're at Pittsburgh, host Buffalo, host the Jets.
Okay, they may lose one more. That's about it. Okay, I don't see them losing more than one more. So they're going to finish with 4 losses, I would think. And so then your question becomes, where are they seated? If they're not in the top 2 and they don't have a bye, they could very easily be beaten. But if they get that bye and they get to host the first playoff game, I think they go to the conference championship game. But is a lot of. I mean, let's talk about some of the things that have been interesting this year in the NFL. I mean, aside from just ranked player or teams and where they sit. I mean, you look at the Giants, Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's been everything that's been advertised. Yeah. I mean, the guy is phenomenal.
He is, but he's not as good as Peterson was as a rookie, even.
Maybe not, but he's also the first
every Sunday, and he's not.
He's the only other running back besides Peterson who's had 3 touchdown runs over 50 yards in his rookie year.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll give him that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's not he's like you said, he's earning his status as the number 2 overall pick.
Yes.
I'm saying let's hold it a little bit in terms of like the greatest running back in the last 25 years.
No, I'm not going to say that. No. I mean, Adrian Peterson is in a class by himself. I mean, he's still doing it, and he's 31 years old.
33.
Whatever, 33. Yeah. The guy's still a workhorse.
Yeah.
And he did run for 2,000 what did he run for? Almost 2,100 yards. You know? So he's.
But how about just in general, like the offenses we're seeing here, like last Monday night game, the Chiefs and Rams, we weren't able to see it,
right?
But we woke up and saw the score. I said they basically ran a 7-on-7 drill.
That's exactly what they did. You're right.
Which is ridiculous. We feel it's ridiculous. We like defense, but I just don't like it. I just don't like it's just run of the mill now for a QB like Trubisky, who's not that great to have 5 touchdowns and like 400 yards.
Right.
But you never see that in the old NFL. We've talked about this before a little bit, but it seems to just be escalating every week now.
It's getting pretty bad. I mean, the rules have been changed so much that, you know, I mean, we talked about this with our producer Nathan, who was a linebacker. It's almost impossible to play defense now. I mean, you can't cover a guy, you can't put your hands on a guy, you can't tackle a guy a certain way without getting a penalty. I mean, it's almost impossible to play defense anymore, and the NFL seems to like it because, you know, obviously scoring's up, fantasy football, you know, that's another thing that factors in. Ticket sales.
People seem to strangely like it because you see stuff on like Twitter and even the like shows the next day. Like, oh, that was the greatest game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, why? Because nobody gets off each other. Made it great.
Right.
I mean, there can be just as good as a 14-10 game. You know? I don't know. But yeah, I guess that's what people like. That's why the NFL is trying to cater to them.
Well, and that's exactly what's happening. I mean, that's exactly what it is. They want scoring because they want excitement. You know, and as much as there are a few people like us who are purists who like to see a really well-played game that's 14-6, but the majority of people don't want to see that because they don't understand the game. See, that's another factor that we're missing here is that everybody and their brother thinks they understand baseball, okay? All right? I mean, let's face it. When I coached you guys as Little League, right, every father thinks he understands baseball, but most fathers don't understand football. So that expands itself to the general fandom, right? They don't understand the game, so they want excitement. Oh, scoring. They think if the teams are running up and down the field, that's really excitement, okay? They don't appreciate a linebacker that fills a hole well and makes a tackle or a corner that jumps a route. You know, they don't get that. So that's part of the problem. But then also, I mean, you and I and Nathan sat and watched a little bit of a couple soccer games over the Thanksgiving holiday, and we started to realize a little bit of that, right? Both games were 0-0. One finished 0-0, and one, they scored a goal in the 91st minute. So you can see a little bit of why soccer's not popular in this country, right? Because nobody scores.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And we're not soccer purists. We don't really understand what we're watching.
That's exactly right, yeah.
So I'm sure that if you were a soccer purist, you could have watched one of those games and be like, oh, this is great. Like, there's a lot of action going on that we're not really seeing, which I guess is...
But that's my whole point, is that, you know, is that if we were purists, we're the football purists, so we appreciate a well-played defensive game. A soccer purist probably appreciates that, right? Because they're seeing how a team is pulling back on defense, or whether we can't say so. So what do we think? We want to see a goal. Yeah. So the average person who doesn't understand football wants to see a touchdown.
Right.
And the NFL is probably not going to go back, you know, because they've come too far down that slope to go back, you know.
Well, it's all sports. I mean, basketball.
It's the same.
When's the last time you saw a 90-88 game?
Exactly. And why is that? Because they let teams hand check. I mean,
they don't let them.
They don't let them hand check. That's right. They don't let them touch each other, and guys go to the basket and slam dunk it. You know.
Traveling, as Nathan likes to point out, a lot of traveling.
You know, crab dribbles, you know, the old crab dribble. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know.
Well, one other thing let's hit on before we leave is the match, Tiger and Phil.
That's right, the match. Ridiculous.
Well, we know Nathan, our producer, was very against it. But it turns out we were able to watch half of it, I think.
We were.
Because we weren't going to buy it originally, but it turns out that I guess it was Turner and Comcast, however, they put it on for free right at the end because they're having issues with people who bought it.
Right.
So we were able to see it. Then the one thing we still can't figure out is where the $9 million came from exactly.
Yeah.
Did they put up half each, or was it the winner take all, or was it?
You know, I don't know.
I'm totally sure about that.
If somebody out there is listening to our podcast knows the answer to this question, please tweet us at PressBoxPod and tell us what it is, because that's the $64,000 question, or the $9 million question, is where did this money come from? Yeah. Now, I know they made side bets during the match, like, hey, I'll bet you $300,000 you don't birdie this hole.
Right.
That came from their pockets.
Yeah.
But this $9 million, where did it come from? And nobody, I don't have the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I mean, because they kept talking about Phil Mickelson won $9 million.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't win $9 million if he put half of it up, right?
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know if he put any of it. That's what I'm saying.
That's right. So maybe he didn't put any.
I don't know.
So, and if one of the networks put it up, or they probably lost their shirts, right?
Yeah.
Because they couldn't charge for the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
They had to end up reimbursing the people who had already purchased it.
Yeah.
But the thing that was so interesting to me about this thing was Tiger and Phil both were on PTI before the match, early or a couple days before, and they were asked, why.
The only good show on ESPN, by the way.
That's right, the only good show on ESPN. To read my blog post today to have my feelings about ESPN, but anyway, and they were talking about this was kind of meant to be partly a prototype of what watching a sporting event might be in the future, okay? Well, that doesn't make any sense, okay? Because first of all, and the reason they said that is, I think, what's his name? Tony Kornheiser asked them, said, hey, there's only going to be like 500 people on the course, right? Yeah. It was by invite. Oh, that's a prototype. So you're going to tell me that in the future, nobody's going to attend sporting events and everybody's going to watch them on pay-per-view.
I don't know that he meant that so much as apparently there's a lot of well, I played in Vegas, but there's a lot of in-game gambling, in each hole, and
You mean through your computer?
They didn't have anything set up where you could actively gamble, but it seems to be more like a gambling-centric thing. I don't know.
All right.
It could be part of it. I'm not really sure.
All right. Well, that aside, then again, I mean, these guys, Tiger wasn't into it. You could tell, and he even came out today in a recent interview, not talking about the match, but said, I took a lot of time off after the
Tour Championship.
Well, after the Ryder Cup. He says, and now, I've been working on my body. He says, because last year, playing 7 events in 9 weeks at the end of the season, he says, it wore me down. I lost a lot of weight. I couldn't keep my weight up. It was hot. So this year, he goes, I've been working since September on my body. He says, I'm just now starting to get back to work on my golf game. All right. So he went into this thing rusty, right? He probably hadn't even picked up a golf club more than maybe 2 or 3 times. Now, to you and me, we'd be shanking it all over the place. He still played well. But my point is, he didn't play to the level he was playing at when he won the Tour Championship. Yeah. And Mickelson didn't either.
I know. If you play that, then he blows Phil off the course.
That's right. But my point is, if you're going to have this match and you're going to have it on pay-per-view, these guys should have had this thing like the day after the Ryder Cup. Right? Yeah. Or else tell them, hey, you guys need to be prepared. I mean, they both shot a 69, which to us sounds really great, but they should have shot like 63 or 64 on that course. Yeah. So to me, it was...
That course isn't hosting events. It's not is it, right?
No, it's not.
It's probably not the toughest course they played.
That's right. Now, they tried to say that the pin placements were tough and the greens were slick, but come on, My point in saying all that is that if you're going to have this quote-unquote the match, it should have been handled a lot better than it was, because it really wasn't very compelling. I mean, you and Nathan watched the last 5 or 6 holes or 7. They couldn't make a putt. I mean, they look like me out there. If I had a 6-foot putt to win $9 million, I probably would leave it 3 or 6 inches short like they did too, So I don't know. I mean, it was nice. It was fun to watch. It was nice to hear them talk on the course, Mickelson talking about the Oregon-Arizona State game, and
In the end, he tells Tiger to pick the ball up. I don't want to win like that.
I don't want to win like that. So you got a little bit of an insight to what it's really like out there, right? Because what they might talk about. But other than that, I thought it was ill-conceived the way it was handled and the way they played and all that stuff. But I guess it was okay.
Okay. Yeah,
the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I guess it's either that or Virginia and Virginia Tech or something.
Exactly.
But, So that's good. We'll obviously next time we come out with an episode, the college football playoff rankings will be finalized.
Right.
And we'll obviously talk about that, as well as some more NFL, and then we have a hot stove heating up. Winter meetings coming up.
That's right.
So there'll be a little baseball to talk about as well.
Yeah, you'll have a good report for us when you come back from the winter meetings.
That's right. I will be attending the winter meetings.
And for those of you out there, I gave Joseph strict instructions at the winter meetings to talk to Brian Cashman, the Yankees general manager, since I'm a Yankee fan, and I want to know what are the Yankees thinking with some of these moves they've made, and we'll talk about that on our next episode.
Absolutely. So, thanks for joining us this episode. Like we mentioned Twitter earlier. Tweet at us or follow us on PressBoxPod on Twitter, or at PressBoxPod on Twitter, and you'll get the latest episode updates and where to download there as well on iTunes. And we look forward to bringing you the next episode soon. Signing off on the PressBox Podcast, Ralph Joseph Miranda. Take care.